I have said about you that I think you were raised in a kitchen. Is that fair to say?
Yes, 100%. Growing up, my mom had a very normal job. It was, she sold insurance, and then, at the flip of a coin, she decided to buy a bakery. And then my sister and I were put to work immediately. So we worked in that bakery from, every weekend, 3 a.m. to 2 p.m. whenever it closed, all the summers. It was a lot of fun when I was older. When I was younger, it was, why are we waking up before Saturday morning cartoons? I haven't seen Garfield in I don't know how long. I missed every Captain America episode. So we would come in with mom, and, it was really, the sun wasn't out, and I would legit sleep on flour bags because I was so exhausted. But as I got older, once you're up, you're up. And so I started getting those, smaller tasks of making the muffins, and hey, trust Alex to brush egg whites on the fruit sticks, and she could put sanding sugar on them. And so, it was like that for many, many years until, she decided to, relieve us of our duties, and then sold the companies. Oh gosh, San Juana's reputation. So she was very much known for everything was perfect. My mom has been known to throw away just an entire sheet pan of donuts because the donut felt like it had too much grease. She would taste a donut hole, and if it was, too heavy or too heavily iced, the baker would have to start over. And I always felt really bad. His name was William. I felt really bad for him because he was the one who would come in way earlier than us. He would come in at 1 a.m. if we had a lot of, catering orders that day. He would come in at midnight, and he would make the donuts. And I always thought it was, really, rude, I guess, of my mom to say, no, unacceptable. But she wanted to drive her business, and she did that. She created so many different, non-traditional donut store items that we sold. It was, at the time, like, why would you sell a sandwich in a donut store? It was unheard of. But she created this really special recipe, and it was super known. It was very popular. It was a secret ingredient. She blended all of the spices at the house, which I knew what it was. And I was so special because of it. Like, I know what it is. It's Mexican oregano. And so that became insanely popular, and we would, cater to schools, we'd cater to offices, and it was a bit of a hustle. Like, we wanted to get her name out there, so we'd have all of these big boxes of everything that we could do in one, and we would just give them away. And I would walk in with her, and at the time I felt it was awkward and cringy because nobody knew we were coming, but it was like, Tony Soprano, slide this over, take a look at what we got. This is gonna, rock your world. And it did. It did. After a while, our sandwiches, kolaches, donuts, everything that she put together was coming in, invoice and invoice and invoice. And, her company grew, and her staff grew, and, my workload grew. The money was good. She paid.
So if she was pushing people toward that perfection and commanding that level of attention to detail, was that just her natural personality, or were these learned leadership traits?
Yeah, definitely natural. Her entire life, she talks about, I love listening to her stories, and her attention to detail is like no other. The way she did her studies, mom went to school twice. She graduated summa cum laude both times. She just does everything to perfection. Look at me, I'm perfect. But no, she really does. It became it was a top behavior for me, I truly believe, because I don't know, I guess growing up with a mother who's absolutely perfect, you're like, my room's a mess. Let's see what she says. Time passed, and I just became that type of person. And it's funny because I'll talk with my friends about it, and, I'll talk about my mom, and they're like, oh, that's where it comes from, your drive to make sure. And I don't really call it perfect anymore. I call it as it should. This is how it should be. Why would you accept something less? Why would you drive all of this way, do all of this work, put all of this effort in, bring all of your partners in to do the same, to turn in something that's less than? It didn't make sense. And so that's how I view it. I know what perfect is, I think, because of her, but my reason to get there, I think, is different.
And I've heard you talk before about your mom and her inspiring model of leadership and her expectations. is that it wasn't about her own ego, but it was about her understanding of service and a desire to give people what they deserve.
Yeah. So, the donut store opened at 5 a.m. And I remember, when I was awake, why are we open this early? There's nobody, there was like 6 of the same people that came in every single time. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And she, very calmly, which was very rare, my mom said, if we weren't open at this time, those 6 people would have nowhere to get coffee and breakfast. And, at the time as a kid, just, eye roll growing up and, realizing like what she was doing for her customers. Same thing for her employees, what she did for them and how she got to know them, giving a loan for one of her the fryer guys to get a car, adjusting hours so that, Vilma could go to school. It was just full circle of what we would call right now, hospitality, customer service, really caring for your people, knowing them enough to know that when you do make this change, you're going to talk about it with them first. And she was a leader, but she wasn't a dominating, like tyrannical leader. She was strong. She was la jefa,
So being raised by a culinarian and in a kitchen, did you know from a really young age that you wanted to be a chef? Was that obvious to you from the very beginning? How'd you get to that point?
I can't remember a time I didn't like to cook. There are really funny photos that my mom, continuously threatens to show. I feel like you have them in your possession now, I want to say. But I had always had a cookbook. There was this real lemon, the lemon squeeze bottle. And if you had enough of those points, you could get a cookbook. And so I went around to all, I was in apartments at the time and got all of theirs. I got the cookbook, and from cover to cover, I made every recipe. Like I just wanted to know. And there was this chocolate cake that looked so amazing, 5 layers, so cool looking. And I studied that recipe and I made it. Oh my gosh, it looked like it exploded in the middle and it was falling sideways, and the colors were right though. So yes, but yeah, I loved it. I loved it from a very young age to growing up. All throughout high school, I worked in kitchens. I remember my papers in English would be, here's my proposal on how to open a restaurant. Here's what people like to eat. And I would make note of it when I would go and I would see people, why is there a queue here in line when they could easily move this and do this? I just love everything about pleasing people in a food way. My favorite thing to say, because every chef hates when they say, what's your favorite thing to cook? Like, oh my gosh, why don't people know not to ask that anymore? So I've perfected my answer. It's my favorite thing to cook is your favorite thing to eat, because it really is. I do this because I love to watch people enjoy what I make, and it's grown into, I want you to enjoy what I make and the whole experience that we create for you. So, being called Alex, as, it's not so, I guess, normal or a common now, but you have a boy's name, And in my head, I'm like, well, it's Alexandria. I didn't want to tell people that. So I did research on my own, like my name has to be better than this, So I looked it up, and, it has roots of being a great leader, similar to Alexander the Great. And so I really felt like I took on that role. Not that I was, not a leader at the time, but I really started to absorb that and portray that more and more in my life. Even just doing school projects, everybody's just chaos, and, I bet I could have been chaos, but no, this project had to get done. And this is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to do. This is what I'm going to do. We're all going to get a good grade. Let's go. From that time on, I had this, I want to say it was a natural ability to lead, but I just loved it because I knew how to get things done quickly and perfectly. And it became just a second nature to me, and it still is now. I, just going to a catering that I know nobody at, I'm still pretty new to this company and jumping in, and people just will naturally follow that really strong leader that they know has their best intentions. I think that I know that I have that.
So between the name, your mom's example, her model of leadership, what else have you drawn inspiration from, and how have you learned not only the skills that you have, but how to be the chef that you are today? What did that journey for you look like?
I mean, I'm a product of many mentors. I have natural abilities, yes, but I was a firecracker. I was, had lots on my shoulders that I felt, were against me, and it just really wasn't. And it took a lot of people to peel back layers that needed to be shed. And I really attribute that to about 4 of my mentors that I have, one being the first one of, hey, you actually are really great in the kitchen and you need to stop being so hard on yourself. I would make something wrong or I'd scorch something or, whatever it was, I overseasoned it. And she was a really big advocate for me. Like, she was always on my side, not that anyone was against me, but here I am thinking everyone's against me. And so that was big. Another one was, why are you so unwilling to trust people off the bat? What did they do? And in my head, I guess I had picked out, what were they going to do? We're going to do something to me. And peeling back that layer of like, hey, you really need to start with instilling trust into people because nobody's out to get you. Like that's in your head. And then just being taught patience, being taught, how to communicate with people. If you feel your anger start to rise, why don't you go ahead and take it down a level and realize why you're upset in the first place? And so it really started to have this nice calming effect. This, again, I'm here to listen. I want to watch you succeed. It's not about me. It's about what I can do for you. I really appreciated this book. One of my chefs gave me, it was called Servant Leadership. And it's really about, I don't have a job unless everybody else who reports to me has everything they need, is able to succeed in everything they do. And that's my job, to make sure that they have that. And so, raising teams growing up, as a sous, as an executive, as a regional executive chef, with that in mind, I know that that's what really catapulted me into how quickly I rose. So I sometimes look at my resume and think, wow, I can't believe that I went from, USC degree to working in a deli to where I'm at right now. And a lot of people helped me get there, and a lot of really rough lessons happened in between, but it made me drive harder. And I was moving my way up in that restaurant to where I finally got to work dinner service. I cut bread. So I got dinner service. I was out of the deli, and I stayed super late so I could learn how to debone fish. Became very great at that. Started learning how to put in orders and then so on, right? So I moved my way up. I decided that I'm going to be brave enough and applied to be a sous chef. And I did, and I didn't get it. I got the lead cook position because I didn't have a culinary degree. Guess what? I worked even harder. And in 3 months' time, I had that sous chef position. And it was great. I learned how to do inventory. I learned how to place proper orders. I learned what sustainable seafood meant at Monterey Bay. These were things that you can't be taught, I don't feel like, in college, in a culinary setting. These were real experiences that real chefs were telling me. The cooks that put me beside them to say, here's how you clean a fryer. Fantastic. I know how to do that, and I know how to train how to do that. Fast forward, I'm at new positions with new chefs, learning new hard lessons, and I really do take these lessons, whether they were hard or easy, and use them to elevate others.